And hi everybody, welcome to Fresh Outlook, the show where we're talking about what you're talking about, but you know that already. I'm your host, Taryn Winterbrill, but just call me TWB. Happy belated Thanksgiving, everybody. So on that note, let's talk turkey. On today's show, we'll begin by discussing a few of America's most popular retailers. First up, Walmart. Disgruntled employees held strikes across the country that started on Thanksgiving Eve. We'll discuss the conflict and the aftermath. Then we'll talk Twinkies. Ding dong, the Twinkie is dead, or at least at this point, Hostess is dead. We'll discuss the latest and also what went wrong. Here's a hint. It has nothing to do with the cream filling. That's just my theory, but we'll see. Then we'll change gears and we'll talk some politics. After definitively losing the presidential election, the GOP is trying to craft a new, friendlier image if they hope to have any chance in 2016. So who can help? That's the question. It's also ahead. We'll finally guide you through surviving the holidays graciously and gracefully in terms of your health, your family relationships, and your wealth. But before we get the conversation started, let's meet our all-star panel. Welcome, everybody. Good to see you.
Good to see you.
A week flies by very fast,
Yes,
but I missed you guys. Let's start with WJ. Who are you? Where are you from?
I'm W.J. O'Reilly. I partner with Harvard College and its Center for Public Interest Careers.
Welcome, welcome.
I'm James Peterson, Director of Africana Studies at Lehigh University and contributor to thegrio.com.
Great, terrific. Francesca.
And I'm Francesca Maxime, news anchor here at Ebru TV and also the author of Rooted.
All right, we'll get into it in just a moment, but first up, disgruntled workers at Walmart, the world's largest retailer, they decided to go on strike this Thanksgiving. They staged a Black Friday protest across the country, seeking better pay and benefits. Take a look.
As one of the biggest companies in the U.S. operating from thousands of stores around the world, Discount King Walmart has also met tons of criticism. Over the years, the shopping chain has been center target for lawsuits and complaints about low wages, poor working conditions, and skimpy health care benefits, as well as its fierce anti-union policies.
Walmart wants it's hoping that if this case doesn't proceed as a class action, that these women will not have the means to pursue their claims and it will be unaccountable for the discrimination that we think it's practiced.
However, despite the negative buzz, business at Walmart is booming. Across the country, millions depend on its low-price deals for everyday goods and their own employment. This week, just as the holiday season picked up swing, major strikes were planned at hundreds of the retail giant's stores. And as the impact of these Black Friday protests become clear, the plight of the American worker is once again under the microscope.
Under the microscope, indeed. Not surprising that there's another Walmart strike, rather. Listen to this. It was posted that despite these strikes, this was reported as the best Black Friday opening ever from 8 p.m. on Thanksgiving Eve. 8 p.m. to midnight, rather. They processed nearly 10 million registered transactions and almost 5,000 items per second in a 4-hour period. That said, do you think the strikes really had any influence? WJ, what do you say?
Well, I'm glad that they're standing up for themselves, their families, and their livelihood. But this is the direction that American business has gone in over the last 30 years. Why is everyone surprised when configurations like Walmart come about, where people have low wages, no benefits, and huge corporate profits? I mean, this is the corporate American dream.
It's corporate America at its finest and its worst.
It's labor America's nightmare,
right.
though.
That too.
You know, at the end of the day, Walmart has been a bad actor in the global capitalized market. I mean, we're hearing all this information about all the crazy ways in which they're paying to play, how they're bribing people to build stores in certain areas. When you combine that with what they've done to their workers, the way they've repressed workers' wages and depressed workers' benefits, you add to that the ways in which they exploit Chinese labor and all the different sort of cheap products that they cram down the throats of American consumers. They've just been bad actors in the global capital market, and it's really past time for us to take them to task for it.
Well, yeah, I mean, the real problem is that they employ so many people.
Right.
Nearly 1.5 million people in the United States work for Walmart. And so it's, you know, one of those things that I think that is going to affect somebody that you know. And a lot of people are dependent on the corporation to be better citizens.
All right, let's take a look real quick. We have another piece we want to show you in terms of how consumers are, I believe it's consumers who are fighting back. Let's see.
Because we live in America and we work for the world's largest company and we're still not making it.
Because I have to choose between paying my bills and having enough to eat.
Because I'm 52 years old and I can't afford my own apartment on what I make at Walmart. because management bullies us and causes unnecessary stress?
Stand up, live better.
Stand up, live better. 100 cities held strikes across 46 states. I mean, I see why they want to do it on Black Friday, but the sales just keep getting better and better. The sales keep starting earlier and earlier because the consumer is driving. I mean, we're telling Walmart, we want you open.
At what point are you shooting yourself in the foot? You know what I
Right.
mean? If we continue to, you know, we went from a manufacturing society to a service society, all of the jobs, of course, and people are working at Walmart making $22,000 a year, living below the poverty line. From these folks that you just heard right there, they don't have enough money to live. There isn't formal organized labor and unions at Walmart, although they're backed by one union, some of these workers that are speaking out. They have been told that they can speak directly to management, but they can't really speak directly to management, and that's why they went to this, you know, to this extreme of actually having a walkout and a strike. The problem is that I wish they did it without anybody knowing, because that would have had more of an impact to have everybody be able to come in and, you know, have replacement workers. But this insatiable need of American consumers to buy cheaper and more, that's really part of the problem. And unless we get rid of that, this is going to continue.
That's the American way. Go ahead,
these workers at Walmart are captive. They're captive of a system that we have had a hand in creating. So many of these people would be making good livings if they're working on assembly lines in American manufacturing, but we don't manufacture anything anymore, and that's why they have these jobs, and why management seems to have this kind of a stranglehold on their wellness.
Can I tell you something? Listen, 35 to 60% of small businesses in the vicinity of a Walmart will fail.
That's exactly right. This is
how disheartening is that?
This is the untold story that the big box stores also diminish and destroy small businesses. So the fact that
I thought everybody knew that.
Well, we need
My
to
parents
keep
lost
saying,
their drugstore because
we
the chains
we need to keep saying a lot of mom and pop stores have been put out of business by the Best Buys and by the Walmarts of the world. And at the end of the day, these workers, like WJ is alluding to here, are imminently replaceable. And so it's very, very difficult for them to organize because it's very, very easy to replace a Walmart clerk.
What is legal is Walmart acting legally, with the exception of course, the 22 million bribes or $20 million in bribes
Why
in Mexico.
is everyone so up in arms about calling it bribery? That's the way business works around the world in most countries.
Well,
I don't know.
Well, it was in those were bribes by the attorney who worked on the cases to pay them off and admitted them and then confessed to the whole thing. But that does happen a lot. We know that that happens in the world. We know that that happens. It doesn't condone it or make it any more legal. But when we're looking at a place like Walmart, we're looking at how they operate within the United States and globally for that matter, you will find that there are places that refuse to let one in, like New York City. So you don't have
Walmart.
Many
small businesses.
Yes, because they know that New York depends on your local bodega, your local pharmacist even still survives more than you'll find a Walgreens or a CVS. And so I think that there are places that need to recognize that it's possible to say no to Walmart and get a better community, if you will, in exchange.
Is it realistic though? I mean, how do we stop this trend?
Well, trend,
I'll be the first to say. I mean, Walmart is the cheapest on the block, and in this economy, when you're supporting a family, how do you stop
we're
consumers?
a consumer culture, and we're moving to an extreme consumerism in our society. Very, very difficult to eradicate Walmarts in that equation, but we need to be supporting these workers because what needs to happen is that all the concentration of wealth at the top of Walmart has got to be dispersed down to its workers. That's a way to lift our economy up.
Redistribution of wealth?
It's not redistribution.
Send me an email when that happens.
Well,
it's just,
I think that those workers, the workers that appeared on that clip that we just saw a few minutes ago, they took great risks in doing that. But I think that actually we have to support them as best we can in
how do we do
putting
that?
Together some kind of
by marching with them, standing in with them. We still have to consume from Walmart because that supports them.
Would you do that? Would you
I don't buy from Walmart, but I would march with you. Absolutely, because at the end of the day, getting them from $22,000 to about $30,000, which would be above the poverty line, which is crazy. Anyway, that would be minimal impact on the executives' top salaries.
For the record, Walmart earned $15 billion last year, and the average employee, like you said, is paid a little over $22,000 a year.
But I don't think that's so different from
a
starting journalist in a CBS affiliate in Binghamton or Elmira, New York, making 15 or 17 or 20 grand a year when you're out there slinging your own camera around trying to get a story, and you have Les Moonves at the top of CBS Viacom making $70 million a year in stock options and all kinds of craziness. And you can say, okay, you know, he needs to do this because he figured out how to make money for the company. That's true, but at the same time, there's a way in which I think you can have a better better, not redistribution of wealth so much, but more justice and more equity.
But listen, the executive compensation in America has already been a redistribution of wealth from the labor, from the workers, and from consumers up to the top executives. So talking about redistributing, we can talk about that, but it's not a bad word because that money has been flowing up to the top 1% in terms of executive compensation for decades now.
It's not a bad word. It's just a word that's been used freely over the past 4 years.
Well, even in failing companies like Hostess and Twinkie and that whole situation where everybody was, hoping that maybe the mediators could come in, and they blamed the labor unions that did exist and that do exist, the Bakers Union at Hostess. They blamed them, meaning the corporate bosses, blamed them for demanding higher wages and
which is a bunch of Twinkies,
which
if you
is
exactly compared to what they're making.
Of course.
Compared to what they're making, but they blame them for that when in fact they really weren't good stewards of their own shop. They weren't figuring out a way to get technologically savvy to, for example,
they don't care. They're getting paid, getting 300% increases in their salary. I wouldn't care either. I'd be on, in the Maldives. Drinking a pina colada with Twinkies.
Right.
But the thing is when you can't have it both ways. So you have to depend on your workers, and you have to also be able to work smarter in terms of business executives. You have to be able to streamline your businesses and come up to speed. We saw a lot of places like Polaroid and stuff also go out because they did not see the future.
Can I ask you a question about this whole idea that Walmart says they don't want unions because they don't want a third party, they want to talk directly to their associates? How does that exist?
It may be true for them, but it certainly isn't true for the workers.
Exactly.
But how did it get to that point?
Well, again, Walmart brought so much revenue into the system, and because of the large size of their employee base, bring so much revenue into the system that they really need to be regulated in ways that other companies are not regulated. And until that happens, workers are going to be oppressed in that system.
Right. All right, hold that thought. It's time to talk Twinkies after the break, rather. That's ahead on Fresh Outlook. The demise of Hostess. What went wrong? Stay with us. That's next on Fresh Outlook. And hello, everybody. We're on? All right, we're on. Welcome to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. Well, it looks like some of your favorite and mine Hostess snack cakes like Twinkies, Ho-Hos, and Ding Dongs. I like saying that. They may be a thing of the past. Hostess has filed for bankruptcy, and it appears it will be liquidating its business after 82 years of Twinkies. Take a look.
After 82 years, the makers of Ho-Hos, Ding Dongs, and Twinkies are going out of business, and with that, talks of Twinkie hoarding online. We decided to go up on the Upper East Side to see whether or not we can still get some of those classic Twinkies.
No more Twinkie. That's it. It's over. Because they went out of bankruptcy, and now no delivery for the last week.
According to the History Project, Twinkies were developed in 1933 when a baker named Dwar decided to fill banana filling into shortcake. Back then, you could get a package of 2 Twinkies for a nickel, which was a great bargain during the Depression.
But I don't think it's the end of the world. I think we have other issues in our lives to worry about. So I say goodbye, Twinkie. We'll see you at the Smithsonian.
The Twinkies survived the Great Depression and World War II. President Clinton was said to even pack a Twinkie for the Millennium Time Capsule. We stopped by another store and...
Ever since they said they're going out of sale, it's like everybody's trying to get what they can get.
From 3 nights ago, people still keeping asking me for Twinkies, but no more, sold out.
If the company shuts down, 18,000 jobs will be affected. Hostess blames union workers for failing to meet wage and benefit cuts, and union workers, on the other hand, fault the company's monetary mismanagement. Hostess and the union agree for now to talk, which may save the company from liquidation. After exploring 8 stores, no Twinkies could be found.
Well, the thing is, you might not be able to find the Twinkie, but wherever they are, they're never going away. Those things are like indestructible. Those will live on. They'll live on forever.
Right.
Literally.
Yeah.
I mean, figuratively, maybe not so much. But how do we feel? Are we surprised? I mean, this is Americana. I mean, I grew up with Hostess.
Food stuffs in the American diet. What are we talking about here? Right. And who cares if this company goes under or not?
What about what do you mean? What about all these workers?
Yes, we're concerned about
what do you mean
workers,
about all these workers?
Yeah, well, no, I mean
18,500.
Yeah, those are a lot of jobs.
Maybe this is one of the last manufacturing jobs left in this country, making Twinkies.
And you think we should just let it go?
No, well, under those circumstances, maybe we shouldn't.
Okay.
I think we should let it go. I mean, there are a couple of things going on here, and this is no disrespect to those workers. It's a shame that, again, we have concentrated wealth at the top in terms of executive compensation, and you have workers who are struggling to make ends meet and be above the poverty line. So that model's terrible for American economies, period, and it's terrible here. But at the end of the day, there are a lot of things that are involved in the demise of Hostess that we don't talk about too much, which is one, the obesity rates in America are out of control. And
yeah,
becoming,
that doesn't help, but that's not the main reason.
It is one of the reasons, because people are understanding that we have to be healthier about the kind of things that we're eating and what we're consuming. So the demand for Hostess Twinkies is not going to be the same going through the 21st century as it was in the 20th century.
Right. I mean, there's a few different things. They didn't modernize their facilities. This is management's problem. They didn't actually, you know, create products that changed with the times. As James was saying, they didn't try to make them healthier, or they didn't try. They basically were so unhealthy. How could you do that if you have things like WJ was saying earlier, like sealants that are as part of your ingredients in some of these baked goods? Then and that's what makes their shelf life so long. But the other thing is about the labor. You have $52 million in compensation claims, workers' compensation type of claims that the union workers were bringing against the business, you know, Hostess. And so Hostess will say, well, that's part of the reason that we can't stay in business, because we don't have, we're not flush with cash to pay that out. Just as a comment about unions in general, I'm pro-union. I think that they're great and they're needed in America. I also think that sometimes people get a little greedy and a little overzealous, and I think that we need to have this conversation also be about union reform as well as you know, about a business model.
It's a tough way to learn that lesson, though. I mean, union reform. That's you're losing, you know, 20,000 workers or so. I mean, this is how we have to learn that lesson.
The executives at Hostess who have doubled and tripled their salaries right in the run-up to the bankruptcy.
Right. I mean, yeah, it's a 300% increase. We mentioned that earlier, but it's such a bunch of bunk. These executives are saying we blame the unions. You know, the unions killed the Twinkie. They're the ones to blame. I mean, is this just outrageous to anyone else, or just me?
It's absurd to me. I mean, again, there are other companies that create these kind of food products that do things a little bit differently. Tasty Cakes is one of those, a little bit more family oriented, and have created a different kind of sensibility around their workplace and their workforce. There's still some challenges there, but they're going to survive into the 21st century because of the adjustments they've made around labor and around kind of the atmosphere of their workplace.
Tasty Cakes, that's a healthier product?
It's not healthier. It's definitely not healthier.
Than a Twinkie? It's got to be healthier than a Twinkie.
Well, I don't think that shouldn't be the bar for us, but I think their model being more family oriented and less one of these sort of difficult to identify corporate kind of
more of a co-worker kind of a mentality.
Yeah, it has a different kind of mentality around it. Philadelphia based, and it just has a different identity, and I think that's what's going to give us some longevity. Definitely not any healthier, but the bar for health and food shouldn't be Twinkies anymore.
No, not at all. One of the things that, you know, again, getting back on the union subject, when you're talking about having, you know, union workers, union rules, having to send in one truck for bread and another truck for the cupcake, baked goods and stuff, and those are the union rules, that becomes a problem, part of the business model. And I have a problem with the fact that sometimes unions hold on to these ideas and to these rules. I've worked in a lot of news stations where I work alongside a photographer, a cameraman, and we could be in the middle of breaking news, but they're mandated to take a break after a certain period of time, and we'll still take that half an hour lunch break or that hour-long lunch break.
And we, as reporters, we don't get that break.
No, right. And so even though as part of a SAG-AFTRA union, you know, we are, you know, make certain demands of our employers as well if we're working in a unionized shop. The bottom line is I think that the unions also need to take a clue from all of this and say we need to get with the times and be more reasonable.
Speaking of the Times, LA Times is a great article. Michael Hiltzik, he basically, read this article, he said the byline is the company had done almost nothing in the last 10 years to modernize or expand its offerings. It has, you know, has nothing to do with the intransigence of the unions.
The unions are not to blame here.
Mismanagement, the venture capitalists, which I think are vulture capitalists. They mismanaged the debt on this company. You know, the salaries went through the roof, and the debt is out of control, and the workers are giving up more and more and more.
It is all those things, but Francesca's point is right in the sense that unions, especially in the 21st century, have to modify their sense about how our economy works, about the kind of demands they can make around benefits. There has to be a little bit more government intervention on things like healthcare to balance some of those things out. It's a very complex calculus we're talking about here, but unions do have to modify and make adjustments.
I just think adjusting their expectations and also working smarter. One of the other things is people who are expecting that companies like this are going to always be there. I mean, one person that was a hostess worker was making 50 grand a year. He got chopped down to 35 grand a year, took a pay cut in order to stay employed. You can't assume that you're going to be able to work at the same place anymore for 18 years or 20 years. It just doesn't happen in America today. Somewhere along the way, you have to prepare yourself for that kind of pivotal change, whether it's getting further training, further education, vocational training. Those kinds of things need to be more integrated from a government level, from a federal level, onto the states and into the populations, so that people are constantly being able to reinvent themselves in ways that are more pertinent to the way today's economy is, in tech sectors, in biomedical sectors, in health sectors.
And I understand, unions need to modernize, they need to readjust, but just on your point, you know, a 14-year veteran of the company describes the 150 million annual givebacks that the union agreed to. In 2005, one worker made $48,000. Last year, $34,000. The pensions continue to get cut. How much can you get? I mean,
again, we need these
union workers were giving and compromising.
We need those execs and sometimes shareholders to make the same kinds of concessions. If we're all in this together, this American economy, we want it to recover, everybody has to make sacrifices. Workers have been making sacrifices all along.
The very last thing I want to mention about this, however, is who comes out the winner and what is the winning formula here. Brand names. Hostess and Twinkie and Ding Dongs and Ho Hos are brands that are ingrained in American culture, and that's why you saw people
There's no
going.
grains in Twinkies.
Yeah, no, there's just a cream filling, banana filling, or whatever that was. That these are American brands, and they are very valuable American brands, which is why people are selling them on eBay for $300, $500, $600 a box. People have an affinity. It's part of their nostalgia and their childhood. And that being said, there are companies that are going to buy up these brands.
And the big winners in all of this are going to be investors in the Ho-Ho, in the Ding Dong, in the Twinkie, who hold on to these. Just as there are 1,000-year-old eggs that are delicacies in China, there will be 1,000-year-old Twinkies that people will pay millions of dollars for in the future.
There will be. With that, people are camping out, as they do every year, on Black Friday. Perhaps this year they were camping out for Twinkies. Take a look.
On Black Friday, retailers offer certain items at very low prices to the first customers who arrive. Shoppers have set up tents outside Best Buy electrical stores across the U.S., including Tony Avatar, who has pitched his tent in Cuyahoga Falls, Ohio. He said he had done his best to maintain the comforts of home.
We've got a couple air mattresses, so very comfortable sleeping. Propane heat, it stays about 90 degrees.
The father of 5 has camped outside Best Buy for the past 9 years and claims to have saved at least $1,000 each year on Black Friday.
It's always great to see the passionate customers every year who are camping out, making the effort. It's a tradition in itself.
Shoppers have also set up camp outside a store in Los Angeles.
Well, I do it every year, and every year I regret it, but when the day comes, I enjoy it. I mean, I don't mind anymore. It's a fun experience. You meet new people. It's like a big tailgate party, in other words.
But other shoppers are not convinced.
And then you got all these people over here camping out a week early. I'm sorry, that's just crazy.
I think WJ said it is, or he said it was like, it is a tailgate party. I have to say, you know, the positives and negatives, it does become sort of an outing, a community. You look forward to it, a ritual, exactly. I say that. However, consumers once again are driving Black Friday before it's Black Thursday. I mean, last year Walmart opened at 10 o'clock at night. This year 8 p.m. Next year it'll probably be 6 p.m. I mean, where does it end?
Where it ends? Listen, isn't it true? Was it Gordon Gekko of Wall Street that said that greed is a good thing, that it drives the economy?
Is it?
I think people have to be camping out like this for days on end to buy stuff. You know, I think that does drive the economy, and that's a good thing, actually, that Black Friday has been as successful as it has. But what happened to the spirit of giving and generosity and humanism and caring and loving and all that? No one's talking about that.
Walmart's giving goods for much cheaper than Target.
Okay.
Well, let's be really clear here that Gordon Gekko was wrong.
Right.
Greed
and he went to jail.
Greed is not good for our economy, especially in the hands of the financiers and the bankers, because that kind of greed is what led to where we are right now. Consumption is good for our economy, though, which is why things like Black Friday.
Best Buy's going out of business too. Trust me.
Consumption on steroids.
Best Buy is going out of business.
You know, Circuit City already went down. Best Buy's next. People aren't going to be doing this for that long, because they cannot afford to continue to have the kind of overhead that they do. People can go in there, test a product at Best Buy, and then go buy it online and shop online for a cheaper price somewhere else.
Right. Unless these corporations are set up for the betterment of those at the top of the food chain, and they've made all that they need to make at this point, now it's time to shut them down.
All right, I got to shut you down, WJ. I'm totally kidding. I just was using your lead-in. We have to take a quick break. Coming up on Fresh Outlook, an overwhelming loss to the Democrats. Oh, sorry, to the Democrats, rather, for the president presidency. It looks like the Republicans need a makeover and a new face of the GOP. Who will it be? We'll discuss next on Fresh Outlook. Fresh Outlook, I'm TWB. Well, after losing a presidential race that was not particularly close, the GOP is searching for answers and perhaps a new identity. Take a look.
Thank you, and God bless America. You guys are the best. Thank you so much.
In the wake of President Obama's defeat of Mitt Romney, Republicans are attempting to reach out to key demographics that they believe cost them the election. Both within and outside the GOP, cries that the candidacy of Mitt Romney was too white, too male, and too old are gaining traction. With the country growing more diverse than ever, Republican leaders say they now want a party that can speak to, not alienate, Hispanics, Black Americans, and Asians, as well as young people.
Well, I'm going to say bluntly, we were wrong. I think Karl Rove, Michael Barone, Dick Morris, a whole group of us, frankly, misunderstood what was happening in the country.
Many believe that for these reasons, Florida Senator Marco Rubio, the son of Cuban immigrants, will soon be a rising star. Meanwhile, across the social spectrum, voices are calling for ways to break beyond identity politics in ways that can unite Americans from the left and the right.
All right, so the question is the GOP even salvageable at this point? I mean, I think they're so far, they've dug the hole so deep. I don't think there's really any getting out until
like Wonder Bread, actually the white bread of the American diet. It's the same as true of the Republican Party.
Yeah, it's obsolete.
What it stands for, I think it's kind of out of here.
Antiquated.
See you.
They used to be more of a voice of the middle class and moderates, and they just totally went haywire in the last maybe, I'd say especially since 9/11, but you know, progressively since Ford and with Reagan. And I just think that to ignore the diaspora that makes up America today, to have a country, as our first show here at Fresh Outlook talked about, that was fueled by immigrants is ridiculous, to not be able to be more authentically in tune with those sensibilities and those diverse communities.
Right.
I mean, it's just, you got to reboot.
Well, I have to say, the more and more I read about how Republicans are up in arms about Chris Christie, you know, fraternizing with the enemy after, you know, sinning. But they're so, it boggles my mind. They're serious about this. Like, there's a national disaster, and they're angry for going with the enemy, and look at what it says about him.
What Chris Christie is doing is precisely what needs to be done in the Republican Party, that kind of rapprochement and finding dialogue, points of dialogue across the aisle. That's what's going to save them.
Is he going to save them, though? Is Chris Christie the next face?
I think he's got a good chance. I think he's a very, very strong candidate.
He is. Chris Christie shot himself in the foot a little bit with his bromance with Obama over Hurricane Sandy. Only because, with Republicans that are still on the old board. I think, you know, Chris Christie is, frankly, their best approach toward, you know, moving forward and having because look, he was a leader, just like President Obama was a president. He was a leader. He wasn't a politician. He wasn't playing along party lines. But you look at Bobby Jindal, the new head of the Republican Governors Association, and he's all saying how he doesn't agree with the way Chris Christie was and how he doesn't speak for them. That's fine. You can go, you know, do your thing down in Louisiana and the South. It's not going to fly up in New Jersey. It's not going to be that way up here. People don't want to buy that anymore. They want to see inclusiveness. Okay, we had Obama win 71% of the Latino vote, 93% of the African American vote, and 73% of the Asian vote. That speaks huge volumes to what it is that people are in tune with, and they just feel like the GOP is completely out of touch.
And not only that, when you have Romney, you know, his whole 47% debacle, but then afterwards he raises to 51% after when he tries to lay the blame on why he actually lost so definitively. I mean, how does that help?
It doesn't help. It doesn't help. That's a lot of what's been going on here too. Is they want to blame Romney, they want to find who's the culprit, they want to blame Christie. You know, they need to do that. They want to scapegoat the process in order to cleanse themselves of what I think for the Republican Party is a really tough loss. At the end of the day, I'd love us to see us move out of the two-party system totally, but because that's not going to happen in the immediate future, we actually really need a healthy Republican Party. That is important to our system. This reboot is important. I hope they do it in a genuine way, not in a way just trying to sort of collect whatever votes they can collect. And Rubio, I don't think is the answer that they're looking for. He's a great politician and has done some pretty good things for the Republican Party in the state of Florida, but we can't homogenize the Latino community, And really, you got to understand that Cuban Americans are quite different from Puerto Rican Americans, are quite different from Mexican Americans, and to try to hinge your Latino sort of demographic on Rubio is probably not a smart strategy.
Right, I'm just getting voices in my head are telling me that Condoleezza Rice has something to say to you. So we're gonna, Condi?
I have to say that right now, for me, the most powerful argument is that the changing demographics in the country really necessitates an even bigger tent for the Republican Party.
Side note, I might digress, but I interviewed that woman at the ESPYs. She's a fabulous golfer.
Yeah, she is.
Condoleezza Rice is using her time well in terms of since she's
they just admitted her into Augusta. I mean, she was one of the 2 women to ever first ever get that honor.
Yeah,
so yeah,
incredible.
She's got to be pretty fabulous.
Should she put her name back in the race? Rice back in the race?
She should. I mean, she'd be an interesting candidate for Republicans to consider if they can really make the moves that they're trying to make it towards this demographic shift. People should also understand that this is more than a shift. I mean, what we're talking about is the way the population is trending over time. And so when you're talking about Asian American populations, Latino American populations, African American populations, they're all growing. And the white American population has hit a plateau in terms of population growth. And so this challenge is going nowhere for the Republican Party. They will have to change or they'll be obsolete.
James, question, do you think that Black Americans can relate to Condoleezza Rice in the way they can relate to Barack Obama?
Absolutely, and I think historically they have in terms of the Republican Party. I mean, remember, Bush got far more of the black vote than either McCain or Romney did because he had a different strategy in terms of how he could speak to social conservative narrative.
He
spoke a socially conservative narrative, a Christian religious right narrative that was not racist, but that embraced blacks who are against same-sex marriage and who are pro sort of Christianity in a way that was very, very effective for him. For whatever reasons, they dispensed with that strategy past Bush and moved more towards this racialized rhetoric that's more about dividing folk up and appeasing their base as opposed to sort of create some bigger
But I have to say, if you're a new voter, you know, you turn 18, you can vote. I mean, you look at the parties, when you have people like Todd Akin making these comments, you know, just over and over again. As a female, I mean, it makes me want to,
part of that coalition,
you know,
that's right.
I mean, how do you recover from that?
Well, maybe having some women in elected positions would be a good start. Condi Rice is a great place to start. I don't know why she hasn't elected to be more involved and why she's just teaching at Stanford right now.
Because she can't be a part of this Republican Party the way that it is right now.
Yeah, I mean, we also had, you know, even Colin Powell is another strong Republican that, you know, had been obviously somebody that was more moderate, but you know, elected to not seek further office. I think that when you're looking at people, women included, minorities and women included, it's more now about economics than it is necessarily about anything else. And the Republican Party, I think, has continued to look at just sort of granting corporations as people kind of thing. They're only looking at the bottom line, and they're only looking at you know, potential profits. They're not really considering people's lives. Mitt Romney's idea of 47% that people were given gifts, and that's why they voted for Obama. His post-election comments on that, in terms of entitlements and things, it just shows how out of touch he is with the average American. I don't know anybody else who has a car garage that has an elevator in it. I don't know anybody else that has the kind of property and wealth that he has. I don't think that unless you have somebody in that office heading up the GOP who's lived a life that most Americans are living, I think it's going to be very difficult to get them back on track with the majority of American voters.
I love how Rubio was recently in Iowa. You know, because Iowa obviously is the first.
The campaign starts now.
I mean, that's not coincidence. He's in Iowa, you know, staking his claim. I mean, but we mentioned him a little bit. You don't think he's the new
not
face?
The answer
he's
for
not
what
the rock
they're trying
star?
to do. I mean, he's probably going to be on the 2016 ticket in some form, either as the top of the ticket or as.
Well, I'm surprised
as
he wasn't
VP.
picked instead of who was that bozo that got picked for?
Oh, Ryan.
Ryan.
Again, the reason why Rubio couldn't be picked is because of his stance on immigration. Some of the things he's not in line with the party, at least the way the party was constructed.
And it's working, right? I mean, the party's really working.
I mean, what's going to happen there? I think that, you know, with Todd Akin, with you know, all these ridiculous comments about women's bodies and ownership of, I mean, I won't even get into details because we all know them, but those are the real issues that the Michelle Bachmans, you know, where are they going to be in a few years? Hopefully they're not going to continue to be reelected, although she was. A lot of the Tea Party candidates were voted out. The guy in Florida there, Alan West, he finally conceded. He was, you know, but exactly. But, you know, I think that did a lot of damage to the Republican Party, and it made the Republican Party even more, polarized than it needed to be.
The challenge for progressives and for the Green Party, and especially for Democrats and for independents, is to look at the coalition that Barack Obama has consolidated over the course of his first 4 years in this most recent election, and figure out if you can actually serve those constituencies. This country is a lot more progressive than people really understand, and I think the challenge in Obama's second term, the challenge for the Green Party, and the challenge for independents and Democrats is to figure out how do you actually serve these folks. I mean, people understand that health care is an economic issue. People understand that education reform, economic issue, workers' rights, economic issues, women's reproductive rights, economic issues. These are the things that the progressives are interested in. They are not interested in fighting wars overseas. They're not interested in drone attacks. They're not interested in the corporate raiders who run the lobbyist firms in Washington, D.C. And so if there's a political party that can begin to address the progressives in America, I think that's the party that's going to emerge in the 21st
But the
century.
overwhelming question is, how do we unite conservatives and liberals? How do we bring the country back together?
And by the way, that was one of the first things that I said several months ago when we were talking about who deserves to win the presidential election of 2012. It's actually the candidate who has the greater chance of unifying the American people. And I think actually that Barack Obama is that person. Actually, is much more suited to do that than his adversary. But I believe that actually the Republican Party, a new wing of the Republican Party, needs to come into existence. And I think that it may come into existence in the same sense as the Tea Party came about as a reaction to and as an attempt to create something like that. I happen to think that it's going to come about as a personality cult around a particular person, and I think it's going to be Chris Christie.
I think so.
I think freedom, opportunity, and individualism have all been sort of the hallmarks of what the Republican platform has been lately, whereas community, collectivism, and sort of more of a group sense of watching out for your fellow man has been the Democratic strategy. The Republican, it's not a political issue. They could pick up on a little bit of that community. It's not about handouts and entitlements. It's about working together. And yeah, Chris Christie could very well be that guy.
Yeah, immigration reform will by necessity create bipartisanship. So the Republicans at least understand at the bare minimum they've got to be participants in the immigration reform process.
And we've got to throw it a break. Thanksgiving has passed. We have your survival guide coming up. That's next on Fresh Outlook. Stay with us. Hi everybody, welcome back to Fresh Outlook. I'm TWB. So the holiday season is upon us. That means lots of get-togethers with friends and family. So how do you navigate through stuff like over-opinionated relatives and dietary wars at holiday meals? Take a look.
The holidays are a time for family, friends, and togetherness, but for millions in America, it is also time for something else, stress. As ironic as it sounds, food is often one of the biggest obstacles to peace. Vegetarian, low-carb, vegan, or gluten-free, the way the world eats, it's changing. What one person wants at the family feast may be totally off limits for another. Is it simply better to avoid a gathering altogether when dietary rules run into conflict? Then, even when the menu is no problem, manners, well, they can be another story. How does one stay cheerful and polite when opinionated in-laws, for example, keep ranting about politics and well-meaning guests can't stop talking? Also during the holidays, millions of Americans struggle to keep their budgets under control. Crowdfunding is an exciting new way to spend for nonprofits who help those most in need.
So can anyone relate to that piece? I mean, were we a part of it meals where there's over-opinionated relatives, dietary wars, people who should keep their mouth shut?
I remember growing up, and actually the biggest fight of the year happened over Thanksgiving dinner. And I remember actually my older sister upending a plate of squash and turkey mashed potatoes right on the. I said I gotta eat this up, and she doesn't have to put some on her plate, and she like that. But you know,
over the diet piece or over politics?
No, it was over the squash. She didn't want to eat the squash that I was being forced to eat. But big fights would happen. I mean, things happen. I mean, suddenly people get together, not communicating a whole lot. Let's look at reality of family life. People don't communicate as well or as often as they should. They get together, they sit down down at a formal dinner and they're expected to be what?
Well, they don't know what to do because they text all the time. People don't know how to communicate anymore.
So here, I have the perfect story for you, right? Every year, we always would do Christmas at my house and my mom's house, and every year we'd do Thanksgiving at my aunt and uncle's house and whatever. And I had such a horrible time last year at Christmas at my mom's house that I told her I'm not doing Christmas next year. I'm not coming. I'm not. And then I told my aunt, I said, I'm not doing Thanksgiving with you guys this year. I'm sorry, but I just really am not feeling it. And so, oh yeah, there was a whole brouhaha and all of that kind of stuff, and email chains and whatnot. And instead, and I really had no plans for Thanksgiving. Instead, I got invited to my girlfriend who I play tennis with. I got invited to her friend's house, their beautiful home. There's a beautiful, they're Jewish, but she's a single parent. She adopted 2 children who are African American. We had these wonderful discussions about race and integration, and I just would have never had that beautiful, amazing Thanksgiving.
So what is your message? Drop the family and
No,
go to your...
It's doing what's healthy for you.
Yeah, you have to try to
doing what's healthy for you.
Avoiding conflicts if at all possible.
I like the conflict. It's special. It's once a year.
I'm usually the opinionated guy at the Thanksgiving table. So
you?
Yeah.
That's shocking.
So I guess I don't really know how people feel about that always, but I think Francesca's right that we have to try to find solace and peace at the holidays. It's not really time to be wrestling through all the family issues and working through all
I think too much emphasis is put on these holidays, Mother's Day, birthdays, and everything. All of a sudden, we've got to be perfect and have these wonderful relationships. Let's honor each other every day of the year.
Well, let's honor the turkeys because they want to be pardoned, and let's see what they have to say. Take it.
They say that life is all about second chances. And this November, I could not agree more. So in the spirit of the season, I have one more gift to give, and it goes to a pair of turkeys named Cobbler and Gobbler. The American people have spoken, and these birds are moving forward. Love this bird.
So hilarious, Cobbler and Gobbler.
Those birds are moving forward. But let's, all kidding aside, those are huge turkeys, and the birds are pretty big too. Oh, hey now. Just kidding, everyone. I digress. Let's talk about some of these dietary wars. I know that WJ, you are a vegetarian.
Yes,
we were talking about your tofurkey. But have you ever encountered sort of been in a meal where there wasn't a vegetarian option, and how did you tackle that?
No, I always found a way to find something to eat. I'd eat vegetables, or it's annoying to be a vegetarian. I mean, and I'm not doing it for moral reasons. It's just kind of one of those choices that I made. There's so many opportunities we have to eat, and I'm a foodie. I like to limit myself, and vegetarianism has been a way of doing that. It's worked for me. But listen. I think that as much as we can simplify and demoralize the whole dietary process, holidays and so forth, the better off we are.
There really should be no debate at Thanksgiving. I mean, there's so many options. It should be much more about consensus. When you're having these huge meals, to satisfy a vegetarian or even a vegan in the context of that, you'd have to be a real jerk as the person preparing the food to not prepare something. My sister is vegan, and we prepare something for her every meal.
What do you prepare? What do those people eat?
Well, they eat very, very healthy food. Sometimes my sister will bring stuff that she can eat, but it's essentially about cooking without a lot of byproducts, cooking without dairy,
and
cooking without meat.
eating nothing that has a face.
That's right, nothing with eyes.
How is the tofurkey, by the way? I've always wanted to try that.
It's convincing. That's good enough.
Put enough gravy on it.
I ate the Trader Joe version this year. It was good. It was darn good.
Trader turkey.
So put enough gravy on it.
Yeah. Right, I agree. Gravy makes everything better, Francesca.
Well, I was just going to say, as far as being responsible for your own dietary restrictions, I think that as a former Overeaters Anonymous member, we would have to bring our own food, weigh and measure it, and whatever. And I would eat ahead of time before I would go to places. Sometimes you take care of yourself. Again, you take ownership and responsibility for yourself. So if you want to be vegan, be vegan. If you only eat meat, be meat. If you're omnivore or whatever, but you need to be the one to be the steward of your own choices that go in your mouth.
If you're sick of the conflict, you make up a new arrangement as you did this year.
Yeah, I mean, you just have to. One of the things that I think is when we're in that kind of a family environment, because I've done it before and I'm sure I'll do it again, it's just that this year I bowed out, is that you feel as though it's your one shot to sort of say whatever it is that you haven't said to that person. And instead of doing that overall in general, when we can kind of just sort of open our ears and zip our lips, I think we're better off. And if you don't know what things are going to look like at that table ahead of time, give yourself a limit. I talked to a woman, a counselor, about this during a previous interview that I had done for a different show, and she basically said, give yourself a time limit. Have a plan B. Make sure you have your own car with you so you can
your own escape route.
Give yourself only like a 2-hour time frame, or say that you'll come for dessert, but maybe not the meal. Give yourself some parameters.
You're bringing up a great point, because Black Friday is also National Listening Day. It's actually a day.
What'd you say?
Is it?
National Listening Day.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear what you said.
It's a day. You're hilarious. It is a day, Taryn, that's set aside for us to listen to our relatives, listen to family members, and learn about their experiences. So
should celebrate a day early on Thanksgiving.
Right, but focus less on Black Friday, more on listening.
Okay.
I think will be a less stressful.
I want to focus on giving for a moment and cash mobs. How's that for a combination? Take a look.
Meet the Cash Mob, America's newest addition to the social media revolution. Like the flash mob, participants decide on a certain time, date, and location to meet. Then bring the same amount of cash, usually $20. Within a small time frame, they rush to buy products within that budget, hoping to boost sales and publicity for ailing owners.
Number one, it brings attention to the location, the fact that you have a store like this, and it also brings new people in.
This is the scene at a recent mobbing of Building Character, an everything shop in Lancaster, Pennsylvania.
We'll have the merchants elect who will be the site of the next cash mob, and we're hoping to do one every single month. So, we'll get to a lot of businesses that way, and I think it's going to bring a lot of excitement to not just the shop owners, but the people who live here in Lancaster.
Well, in an hour and 20 minutes, we did over $1,000, which is an amazing number for a small independent business in an hour. A little over an hour. It was amazing. It was fast and furious, and they were in and out, and they bought some great things, and it was a good time.
Cash mobs are centrally organized on one website, cashmob.com. On the homepage is a map of the U.S. indicating who are the next targets.
I like this, the cash mob. It's new to me, but in the spirit of giving, it's nice to see. It's kind of like appointment television. You all congregate at a certain time and look at the results.
Well, a few years ago, American Express started Small Business Saturday, where they encouraged all of their card members and their folks that they partnered with in a business way to shop using their American Express cards, in their instance, at these small businesses all around the country. So trying to put the focus back on Main Street and not on Wall Street. And this is sort of an outcropping of that. It's another way to focus on local resources, local purveyors of goods and services, as opposed to just going out and getting whatever it is that you might get online, for example,
or Walmart,
or Walmart for that matter. And I think that what it does is it raises an awareness of what is in your community, because sometimes we walk right by it and we don't even notice it anymore. Whereas before, those were the only options that we had when we were kids growing up around the corner. We only had the one store that maybe sold shoes to go to. Now you have a million different options. It re-emphasizes that. And it also does something that is very critical to the long-term survival of any community. It shows interdependence. It necessitates community. You're beginning to lean on one another again and come together to do something in much the same way that you saw a lot of these Hurricane Sandy victims come together and the communities are emerging stronger. This is a way of doing that too.
Without the national disaster.
And I think it's wonderful that people are actually taking back their power, re-empowering people in their community, and kind of voting with how they spend things, showing a lot of self-control, showing communication and a kind of a mobilization in the community. I think it's a really healthy sign.
It is. I mean, to the extent that it remains organic and that it doesn't get co-opted by corporations.
Which it will.
It might, but it's an important point for us to make here that we live in a consumer-oriented society. And so mindless consumption is what the enemy is. What cash mobs and microfinancing and different things like that do, it raises the consciousness of consumers so that we can vote with our money. That's very, very important. So if we don't like Walmart, let's go to some of the small mom and pop stores. If we understand that these big box stores are destroying small businesses, then we dedicate a day to that. That kind of consciousness in consumption is going to be very, very important going forward.
At the heart of it, it's about, sorry WJ, it's about being thankful for what you have and giving back. Let's take a look at one last piece.
Residents of New Dorp, a community on New York's Staten Island,
gathered under an outdoor tent to feast on donated selections of turkey, mashed potatoes, sweet potatoes, stuffing, and all the other Thanksgiving Day trimmings. One woman who lost her home to Hurricane Sandy said she would remember this year's Thanksgiving as her best.
This Thanksgiving, like I said to all my friends, this is going to be the best Thanksgiving, like the Thanksgiving that you're always going to remember. Because if it wasn't for the community and my friends and my family, I don't know what I would do.
Robert Horton's home was flooded and his 2 cars were destroyed in the storm.
During the storm, I lost both my vehicles. My house got 8 feet of water in the ground floor. There's no basement. It's just like a crawl space.
But despite all the loss and devastation caused to his family, he is still grateful this Thanksgiving Day.
Well, today I'm very thankful that my wife and my dogs are here. I'm very thankful about today. I'm a Marine and I don't cry, so I don't care. But I'm very happy for today.
Wow. I get choked up when I see stuff like that.
Yeah.
Well, we are out of time. I want to thank you guys, as always, for being an all-star panel, and wish we had
Thankful.
2 hours. Again, James, Francesca, and WJ for their fresh, uber fresh outlooks. And remember, if you have a fresh outlook, we want to hear about it. Let us know on our Facebook page. Follow us on Twitter at @AbrewTV. Check out our YouTube page as well. I'm TWB, or in the Twitterverse @TWBrill. Thanks for joining us. We'll see you next time on Fresh Outlook. Same time, same place.